in this video, I will dive in deep into how you can use Hono to build your API in Next.js instead of rely on route handlers. I will also explain why Hono is best alternative for your API needs. So what I have here exactly is a standard Next.js application, just what you get when you initialize new project. So let's open the terminal and run the project just to make sure if it's all correctly. So I am using npm, so npm run dev. The project is worked correctly without any issue, just as expected. Now what I want to do is to delete all boilerplate code here inside this page and exactly inside the main tag. And let's type just a simple message, hello world. The same thing I want to do for the global CSS. I want to delete all this stuff come with Next.js when we initialize the project. And I won't just keep the Tailwind stuff above. So usually when we want to have a route in Next.js, we create a folder most of the time called API. And just like so, let's go to the app and create new folder API. And inside this folder, we create a file called route.ts. And inside this route.ts, let's have a simple get route method. So export sync function and get, and inside let's return next response.json, and let's say hello, and the message is hello from Hono stacks. Okay. And you can see the next response is coming from next/server. And now if we go to the localhost/API, we get our JSON object. This is a Next.js regular way to handle routes. This is totally fine, but there is another best alternative, which is Hono. And let's go to Hono website, hono.dev. So they describe Hono as a web application framework, fast, lightweight, built on web standards and support for any JavaScript runtime. And this is something amazing. So you can run Hono anywhere you want. For example, here they have Cloudflare, Fastly, Dino, Ban, AWS, or even Node.js. And if we go to docs, then get started, then basics, and go to this return JSON, you see Hono has a similar syntax and structure to the Express or Fast API. For example, here we have a get route on/API/hello path and its return JSON object. And I think this is the most clean and efficient way to write APIs over folder and file based structure, just like what we have in route handlers. And if you search here for Hono stacks, so you can read from here that Hono stacks make our life easy when we build application using RPC, feature that allow you to share API specification with client side and get the advantage of end-to-end type safety. And this is possible because of these core libraries they have here, such as Zod and Zod validator middleware and Hono client. And here I prepared a simple diagram of our Next.js project that we are going to set up. And you can see we will use Hono API server with Zod validation and the RPC feature and the Hono client as well. For the front end, we will still use Next.js with all its advantages, such as optimization, CU, server-side rendering, and so on. And we will use also a React query. To enable Hono in an existing Next project, let's go to the search here and search for Vercel Hono. And as you see here, the first step is to create a new Next project. So if you want to start from scratch, but for our case, we have already an existing project, so we can go to the next step. And the first thing we need is to create an API folder, and inside it, catch all routes folder, then a route.ts file inside. And if you like to use pages instead of app router for any reason, here they have its structure, but for us we use app router. And if you go back to the project, we have already this API folder. So let's delete this route file, and let's create a folder and open two square brackets, both catch all routes by typing route, and inside this folder we want to have a route.ts file. Okay, and now we need to install Hono. So open your terminal and type npm add Hono. Once the installation is finished, run your project npm run div. I'm using npm, feel free to use any task manager you like. And let's copy this code snippet from Hono documentation and just pass it in side route.ts file. And I want to explain a bit what we have here. First, we import Hono itself and the handle to handle our router from Hono/Vercel. Then we define a runtime to be edge. You can switch to Node.js, for example. But for this tutorial, it's not a big deal. We can keep it as it is, edge. Here we initialize new Hono app and we bind the base path to be /API. And that's what we have in our application exactly, because we have the folder called API. And here we have the get route with path/hello, and get route return a basic JSON object with this message, hello Next.js. For the C, it's main context, so to handle the request and the response. In the bottom here, we have enable Hono to work with get and post routes. Save everything, and now we can go to the localhost /API/hello, and we have a message says hello Next.js, so we get back our JSON object. Next, let's bind another route with param id. Example, let's say get/box/id. And to get the id, we write here const id equal to c.rec.param, and here we pass the id. You can see here we have an autocomplete for this, and this is one of the most benefit of Hono, its type safety. So let's return a JSON object, and let's say the ID would be our ID from params, just like so. Now, if you go to the localhost /API/box/1, we have our ID here printed out. And now it's time to take the advantage of other Hono stacks that I mentioned before in the diagram. Search for Hono stack and let's enable first the RPC, which allow us to share specification between server and the client. And we will do that with Zod validation library. And as you see here, on any route, you can pass unlimited of middleware inside. So everything between the route here and the context will be a middleware. So let's pass a dummy middleware. And these middlewares are very useful when you need to enable validator or authentication or permission protectors. So we can use the validator here to validate the ID exactly, so the ID param. So let's click Zod validator, and from here we can install Zod validator. Let's copy the library name from here, npm add @hono/zod-validator. Okay. And now we need Zod as well, so let's run npm add Zod. And just copy these imports and pass it here in the top of our routes.ts. And now we need to add Zod validator. We add here the validator and pass the param, and we can pass anything we're going to validate, for example, JSON or form if it's a post request. And instead here, I want to write Z object, and I will say the ID is of type Z string. And in here, instead of this crec.param, it will be say.rec.valid, and we pass the param here. And we can destructure the ID as well. And if I hover now the ID, it says that it's type string. And if we change this type to be number, for example, we get the right type, of course, number. Cool. Now we can have a little problem here in this file. If we build a large application with bunch of routes, this will be difficult to maintain the code, and we need to destructure our API endpoints for better organization. And if you go back to the Hono documentation and search for best practices here, we can go to some solution like having controller, but they advising us to not using this solution because it will have an issue with types. As I explain here, the issue is related to types. For example, the path parameter cannot be inferred in the controller without writing complex generics. So this is not a good solution, and they have another suggestion. So if you want really to use controller, you can use something called factory create handler in Hono/factory, as you see here. But we are not going to use those solutions, and what we want to do is what we have here in the bottom, where they're talking about building a larger application, which is build separate files like this. So we have books and authors separated files. So let's copy this example, and we want to have a file called books.ts inside our API, and let me pass all data that I have copied from there, and another one called authors.ts, and let's just copy and paste this as well. For the routes, I am going to delete all these routes, and instead I will copy these two lines, and we need to import them like so. And now we have a more flexible structure, and it's easy to manage everything, and we still have end-to-end type safety, and this is something amazing. And now if we go to the API/box, we get text list box, and if we go to API/box/123, we get ID value here 123. And that's perfect. With this change, if we want to enable the RPC in our application, we need to make some modification. So let me go to the guide here, and RPC, what we are and what we want to do, we are going to have one app type that will hold all our routes, and even if they are in a different files. And if you look to this table here, content, in the right side, we can go to using RPC with larger application, and you can see the difference here is we are not going to have a separate app on every route. What we have to do is to bind all the routes with one app call instead of repeating app on every route path. And the same thing for the authors and books. We'll bind them all in one app call and save all them in constant called routes. So let's replace our data with what we have in this example. So let's copy first the author.ts and replace our data, and do the same thing for books and the same thing for routes. And now it's time to create a front end hooks to handle these routes. And for this video, we will have only one hook to handle git box routes as an example. And to do that, we will need to use a React query. So let's go to the browser and search for React query, go to the first result, go to installation, and then copy the command based on your task manager. For me, I'm using npm, so I will copy this one and go to your terminal and just pass it npm install at stack/react-query. And once the installation is finished, please go back to the Stack website, and in the input here, let's search for advanced server rendering. And as they describe here, this is the main guide or to have the React query with Next.js. So the first step is to create this query client provider. And to do that, let's go to our root project and let's create new folder. And I will call it providers, just like so. And inside here, we won't have a file, and let's call it query-provider.tsx. And just copy the entire code from here and paste it inside this file. And to make TypeScript happy, let's create type props for children. So let's say type props, and here let's say children are type of React node. And let's assign the props here, and we want to name this provider to query provider. Okay, that's all, and we have to save this file. And the second step is to wrap our children in the route layout with these query providers that we have just created. So let's do that. Go to route layout, which is we have here inside the app, and let's wrap our children with query providers, and let's import it from there, from add/provider/query provider. Now we want to create an RPC client that will use this app type. So go inside a lib folder and create a file, and let's call this file hono-client.ts. And the first thing we want to do is to import the HC from hono/client and import the app type from app/api/catch-all-routes/route. And let's export from here a const called client equals to HC, and we pass the type of app type, and here I want to pass the process.env and next underscore public underscore app underscore URL with this exclamation mark. So let's add this in the environment. If you do not have one like me, just go to your root project and create let's create .env.local and pass this next public URL name, and let's pass the localhost 3000 or whatever the port you are run your application on. And if you are in the production, of course, you need to change this. So let's create a root folder where we can keep all capabilities of our application, and I will call it modules. And inside this folder, I want to have box folder, and then an API folder, then our only hook for now, and we will call it useGetBox.ts, just like that. And this hook is going to communicate with this box get endpoint here. So the first thing we want to do is to import use query, and this is from at thinstack/react-query. And also we want to import the client, and that will be from @/lib/hono-client. Then I want to define here an export const. I will call it use get box, and will be an arrow function. And the first thing we want to do is to define our query. So let's say const query equals to use query, and open an object here. First, we want to have the query key, and let's give it box name, and a query function will be an async function. Inside here, we want to say const response equals to await client dot API dot box dot get, and you can see our response is type safe, and we know already what we return, and that is because of the RPC. Now we need to check if the response is okay. So let's say if response not okay, this exclamation means is not. What we want to do is throw error with message, let's say failed to fetch box, and otherwise we will say const data equals to await to erase the JSON function. And we want to return the data, then let's return the query as well. That's all we have to do. Now we have this hook, and we can use it in anywhere we need in our application. And let's try it in the root page for now. So first let's add the use client directive on top of the main page. And inside this function, let's say const data, and is loading is error equals to the use get box, and we need to import use get box. Then let's check if is loading, and so if that is the case, what we want to do, we want to return a div, and let's say just loading and 3 dots. And the same thing for if is error, we want to return a div error loading box. For this is loading, you can use a skeleton if you want to do that. And inside the main tag, let's just print the data. Save your project and refresh the application. Now you can see the loading div before we get the data value, which is just text list box, and it's the same we have returned exactly in get/box routes here, which is text list box. That's all guys for this video. I want just to mention that in my opinion, this is one of the most advanced stacks you can use to build scalable application with high performance. I hope you gain a solid foundation from this video. The source code of course will be available in the description if you like to check it out. And if there is a strong engagement with this video and you are interested in extending this project, perhaps by adding a real database and authentication, so let me know in the comments. I may create another video to build on this project and incorporate those features. To support the channel, please like and subscribe, and happy coding.